Welcome back, fancy lords and ladies. This is your host, Fanciest Man of Cornwood, and today I've got a little bit different style video again. I want to talk about this new Final Fantasy set that we're getting in June of next year. I know it's kind of early to, start putting out videos about it, but when I saw this set, regardless of how you feel about Universes Beyond, obviously it is a pretty divisive topic at times for any Magic player, but I feel like Commander players especially tend to fall on one end of that spectrum. You either like it a lot or you hate it. Um, I'm pretty much in the middle. Fallout and Warhammer really won me over a little bit to where I lean toward just having more fun cards in Magic is good. But I understand people that want to kind of return to familiar planes and things like that. And I hope we see both. I really think it's, with all the different products that are getting released, there's enough room to satisfy both those crowds. And, if anything, the release schedule being ramped up means it might be a little bit easier to ignore some of these sets if you're not a standard player. You're not a player that's going to be playing these constructed 40 card formats. But anyway, this video is to talk about Final Fantasy, and what I'm going to do is just break down not every single game from the series because there's so many different games they could draw from, but the first thing that hit me when I heard about this announcement was just the nostalgia from playing these early Final Fantasy games and just a bunch of different Final Fantasy games from childhood even into, high school, college, that kind of thing. So what I'm going to do is just pick out some of the ones that stuck with me the most, some of the Final Fantasy games I enjoy the most, and just talk about what I'd like to see from those games, maybe do a little bit of theorizing about how they could make that work as a card and things like that. And we're going to dive right in with the OG, the original, still one of my favorites. You can go back and play remakes now that have better graphics, that have a little bit different mechanics, like, Dawn of Souls. That version of Final Fantasy 1 changed a lot. It changed magic and different ways of how things work, but I still like going back and even just playing the NES version, at least to, kind of mid-levels, that kind of thing. So yeah, this is what I'd like to see from that game. There's a lot of games they're going to have to hit on. They're obviously going to have to kind of cut things out. Some of these might be too obscure to make the cut, but, it's what I would like to see, and I'm going to talk about it now. So let's dive in. The first thing, they've kind of baked this in already with some of the enchantments we have that are the class subtype. And yeah, I think Final Fantasy is obviously really good for that. The two that stick out to me, they've always stuck out to me from the first game. And I don't think we're going to have cards that are kind of analogs to them in the regular Magic universe or anything like that. But the Black Mage, it's just iconic. It's the graphic look, of course. I'd love to see that reproduced on a card, and I think they will, since it carries over from the original to a bunch of the sequels. It's not just the original. Vivi from Final Fantasy IX, always going to be a favorite character just because of taking this concept kind of to an extreme end and actually exploring a character where you just can't see their face. They're kind of nameless and things like that. So I'd love to see it, but yeah, obviously one that could deal with direct damage. You could kind of deal with elemental damage through a class, and I think elemental damage is definitely going to be some type of mechanism in the set, something we see in that set. And the Red Mage on the right is kind of the same thing, but I love that this mixes, a fighting class with a spellcaster, and I'm kind of interested to see what they could do with a magic card that is like a Red Mage class or something like that. The other thing that my playgroup brought up, and it's going to be more appropriate for later games, but it even plays into the first game, and that's that there's job systems as well that are in these Final Fantasy games. So maybe we don't see classes. Maybe we see some type of job thing where it's like maybe an aura that can be moved from creature to creature or something like that. I think that could be really, really interesting. So, all right. And then a couple of the enemies, there's lots of enemies from the first game that are iconic. Some of them actually carry over. The Fiends you could definitely have on here. I mean, talk about cool characters and characters that could really carry over into creature cards well, because they're just so varied, and lining up with the elements is always really fun. But yeah, what I've highlighted is chaos because, of course, on the left here, our final baddie from the first Final Fantasy game, super iconic for those of us that stuck through the game, hours and hours and hours of trial and error since the internet was not a thing, and actually got to this guy and beat him. And that's something that I would love to just selfishly see in a card. Some type of legendary creature that's just chaos with that imposing head, the horns, and all that stuff. So, yeah, that would be really fun. And then maybe even better, on the right is Garland. And I think Garland does come back in a few other games. It might not be, it's kind of a reimagining of the character or something like that, kind of like Sid, where, it's the same name, maybe the same kind of archetype of character and personality. But, the Garland from the first one, if we could get flavor text that just says he's going to knock you down, yeah, that would be worth it to me to put it in a card. Now, I know a lot of people would feel differently, especially fans of the newer game, but this is a card that could be really fun. Maybe some kind of, built-in drawback to what kind of weigh against whatever benefit you're getting from the creature card or something like that. But just a really fun, iconic villain, and yeah, another really cool, I think, shout out to the first game that would be neat to see in the set. All right, and last, this is probably going to be one I talk about in a couple of different videos in the series, but what I've got pictured here is the Ice Cave from Final Fantasy 1. I did notice on the official Wizards page that it talks about, getting on your chocobo and riding to different locations. So I really think they're going to do some type of location mechanic, some type of location subtype maybe. And I'm not sure if that's going to be lands, legendary lands. It could even be some type of battle situation where it's not a land, but it's still kind of a space or a space combination of like physical location and what's happening there. So I could see battles from a couple of the different games, maybe Warriors of Light versus Chaos or something like that could make it in. But I put the Ice Cave because of how brutal this dungeon was as a kid. And, if you played this game, there were floors here where you could easily just get encounter after encounter, get just attrition and all these things trying to beat you down as you make your way through the cave. But, as a player that has a Hama Pashar deck, the other thing I'd really like to see from this set is just more dungeons. I think more dungeons would be so cool. And yeah, I've got the Ice Cave here because if I had my pick from the Final Fantasy 1 locations for a new dungeon, it would be this Ice Cave. And I think that would be pretty epic and pretty fun. So, all right. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm going to end it here. Again, I know this doesn't come out till June, but I just find it fun to go in here and kind of look back at these games with those nostalgia glasses and see what would be cool. Maybe try and theorize a little bit about how they could make the cards work, something like that. My big wish is that we get dungeons and that we get, legendary creatures that are not just the heroes of the games, but also some of these villains that are really iconic. So if you like the content, please leave a like and feel free to subscribe. We're going to be releasing more videos and kind of more games in the series of what I'd like to see come into the game as a card in that new set. And as always, guys, thanks for sticking around and watching, and keep playing Commander.